Hey, 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 and welcome back to another episode of the Agreeable Gray Area podcast. I'm hitting you with back to back episodes on this lovely March 16th afternoon. I had time today. Not a whole lot of time because I still gotta go wash my hair and twist it, and that's gonna take the rest of my life. So who knows when the next episode will be. As I mentioned in the last episode, the bonus episode, I will be starting a new podcast series called Moment of Clarity. It's where I interview the amazing men in my life who are also nerdy, just like me, and are just kicking ass at life, relationships, friendships, work, and everything else in between. Because there has to be things in between work and video games. I really hope to God there is. I don't think I mentioned this on the last episode where I got the name Moment of Clarity. It's from the Jay-Z song Moment of Clarity. There is a line that goes, "You record, I recall, because I've really been there before." What Jay-Z means in that line, in that verse is, a lot of rappers are BSing about what they have gone through, the struggle, the hood, and all that. So they're just recording. They're recording just garbage. They're recording false narratives. Whereas when Jay-Z raps, when he tells about these events, it's truth. He's recalling. Whereas other MFers are just recording. I feel like I see that a lot in podcasts since everybody, including myself, has a podcast, has a microphone in their face, and are just out here saying whatever with nothing to back them up. One of the reasons why I started a podcast, well, this was way afterwards, is I wanted to talk about this for a very long time, so I'm very happy that I'll be getting the opportunity to. Starting tomorrow, I'll be recording with Gil, who has been a guest on this podcast before, and he's been on several episodes of the Melanated Council, which is a podcast I co-host with my friends Toby and Ron, who live in different states. And he's been on several episodes. We live stream every other Tuesday night. We're going to be live streaming this Tuesday on the 18th, 9 p.m. on YouTube and Twitch. So please be sure to check us out. But yeah, I feel like everybody just has they're just out here saying whatever. I felt very ill-informed or uninformed, or I just essentially didn't feel as though I had the knowledge and information to be able to talk about these sort of things, even though I do. And what kind of what gave me more confidence in talking about these sort of things is that there's literally people on YouTube convincing massive amounts of the population that the earth is flat. They're really out here doing that. So, and they're out here selling merch. I don't know what kind of merch. I don't know. I don't even want to know how they think the flat earth is looking like. Like, we literally just had daylight savings time change. So if you really think the earth is flat, when, if you ever go to the New England or back down to South Florida or somewhere, you see how long the sun is up versus how it's down, and it's because of the shape of the earth and how it rotates and around the sun. I'm not here to give you a science lesson, but anyway, there's long story short, there's people online who are convincing people that the earth is flat, we've never landed on the moon, and all sorts of just bullshit. Anyway, Um, so I wanted to, I don't even know if this is going to tie into it or not. I'm just going to jump straight into the episode. So tonight, I'm so used to live streaming. It is almost 2 p.m. this lovely Sunday afternoon. So on this episode, I wanted to talk about internal and external locus of control. I feel a little bit weird talking about locus of control because I'm still kind of new to this concept. I wanted to talk about internals, like internal people and external people, for a very long time now. So I'm excited to talk about this. I didn't know that there was like a term for it. So I was glad that I was in the ballpark. So I was just calling them external people and internal people, or externals and internals. I wrote down these notes so long ago, and I just like, so when I heard about the internal and external locus of control, I was really excited, and I made sure to put a note into my podcast notes about this. So I really want to talk about, yeah. So essentially, I'll just get right into it. So a locus of control refers to the degree to which people believe they have control over events in their lives, either believing their actions determines outcomes, which is internal locus, or the external forces do, external locus. To get more into it, internal locus of control, these are individuals with an internal locus of control believe that they are primarily responsible for the outcomes in their lives. They tend to attribute successes and failures to their own efforts, skills, and decisions. They feel a sense of agency and believe they can influence events through their actions. For example, someone with an internal locus of control might attribute a promotion to their hard work and dedication rather than luck or favoritism. External locus of control. Individuals with an external locus of control believe that, I'm sorry, I'm reading this off of Google, so if I'm repeating things and it sounds weird, that's why. Individuals with an external locus of control believe that external forces such as luck, fate, or other people are primarily responsible for their outcomes in their lives. They may feel that they have little control over what happens to them and tend to attribute successes and failures to external factors. For example, someone with an external locus of control might attribute a promotion to being in the right place at the right time or to someone else's influence. So I've been starting to realize, people who kind of just externally blame everything on people and stuff. For the past couple of years now. And like when you start to see patterns and things, and then people, you wish you had a word for it or a name for it. So when I found out about this, I was very, very excited. So I'll give you an interesting story. So I don't know, maybe like a couple of years ago, I was on a dating app, either Tinder or Bumble. Might have been Bumble because I'm banned from Tinder. Very funny story. Not going to explain it right now. This guy messaged me and he asked me, TMI or not, he asked me how often I masturbate or something like that. He asked me like a very vulgar-ish question as the first question. This wasn't my first rodeo. I've had guys ask me some wild ass questions before on dating apps. That's like the other 10% of dating apps. The first 90% is messaging about nothing and wanting to claw your eyes out because you talk to a guy, you ask him a question, he doesn't give you any sort of, he responds to the question, doesn't do it. You do like some follow-up questions, he responds to them, and then he just never asks you a question. And then he messages you the next day like, hey, and then that's literally the whole conversation back and forth. This is my experience and every single other woman that's been on a dating app. So the other 10% is guys who just ask some wild ass questions, usually asking for sex. and then getting really upset when you say no. So this guy kind of falls into that. So he's asked me how often I masturbate. I like to have fun and just straight up lie to these men because I'm never going to meet them. I'm never going to interact with this man, these people ever again. So it doesn't really matter what the hell I say. Also, I've had years of improv and stand-up comedy practice, so I can just, I like to play with people. So I lied and I said, he's the third guy to ask me the same question. I think that's a weird thing to hear as a response. I guarantee you I'm probably the first person who's ever said that to him. If he's ever gotten a response, he probably hasn't. I don't know what other woman would respond to how often they masturbate. That's the first question a guy's asked. I don't know. But that was my response. So I lied and I said, he was like, yo, you're like the third guy to ask me this question. What's going on? Is there like, some kind of project in college or something? I can't remember what I said, but I was like, this is so weird that you're the third guy to ask me that. He wasn't. He was the first guy. I'm not a psychic, but as a fellow human being, if I ask somebody a crazy question like that, and somebody said, yo, you're the third person to ask me that, I would have been like, what, really? Like, what? That's crazy. That's odd. Because I would have like kind of at least like turned my attention back to myself to an extent. I'd be like, I would have just thought that's like really weird. I'd be like, wow, I thought I was being, like innovative or creative or in my dumbass brain if I was this guy, because I don't know how else he would have thought his brain to be. But I was wrong. So instead of agreeing that he thought that it was weird or like, oh, that's a crazy coincidence, blah, 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 and like, just kind of gone off from there because he could have oddly enough fixed this and been interesting. He decided to not be interesting. He decided to not be someone with a personality. So he decided to project or externalize why I have gotten this question 3 times when this is absolutely freaking false. So he said, oh, I'm giving off a vibe. He said like, oh, there must be something about your vibe, blah, blah, blah. And of course, that's just like some BS that men say to like try to be like pseudo deep, like faux deep. Like, oh yeah, you just have this vibe and that's why that's the thing. It's like, it's because of you. It's a you thing. You are responsible for making me ask this question. No, I'm not. You're just you can't even think out, like you can't even fathom that this could be kind of a weird thing or what have you. So I don't know, that's kind of like stuck with me because it's like he was just incapable of turning anything back onto himself or just thinking like, oh wow, that's weird. It's like, no, this is you. This is you isn't me. Like this is because of her. This is a her thing. Yeah, and then he went on to just kind of just say some just weird wackadoo crap about other shit. More than likely like asking for pictures or sex, and because that's just what a lot of these dating app dudes do. Not all dudes, of course. I know that. But instead of acknowledging the irony of of this, he decided to just double back and just say this, the irony of like the whole masturbate question. Like he decided to just double back and say, "Oh, this is just you." I've seen that a lot. Not that exact thing, but I've seen similar instances of things like that where instead of people taking looking at the whole situation or actually just like looking inside or like internally or just acknowledging like what's kind of funny or weird, They instead project or assume that like everything that's outside of themselves um is like is what's impacting everything. It has nothing to do with themselves. So I see external people as external people look to everything outside of themselves and oftentimes believe they have no impact on anything really. These are your fuckboys, your narcissists, and of course people who are clearly insecure but don't want to express it. I see this online often. Of course, this is on social media, so who the heck knows how true it is, but I wouldn't really be surprised because everyone's being influenced by podcasts and social media and just whatever BS they consume. We all are. None of us are immune or susceptible to that. Even if you don't consume social media at all, you have friends who do, and they want to talk to you and tell you about whatever crap they quote unquote learned, which might just be absolute falsehoods. Yeah. So like external people are just like you've definitely have dealt with them where they just blame everything on like just external reasons. They don't really think they cause anything. They don't really think like they're adding or attributing to anything. They're just sort of existing and doing whatever, and you just kind of have to live in their world that they don't even realize that they are also creating. It can be incredibly aggravating and frustrating because you're trying to explain to them like, hey, no, I can't hang out with you at 11:30 at night because you get off at 11 p.m. and you magically think, I'll just be available or awake for you. And then they get mad and upset because it's like they don't see that like staying up for them to meet for the first. This is like a guy I wasn't dating. I was like, we've never met because like he worked at a hotel. Like he worked at a hotel, and if you've known anyone who's ever worked at a hotel, if they say they're getting off at midnight, or if they say they're getting off at 11 p.m., they're really getting off at 2 a.m. because it's a hotel. The person that they have to wait for the next shift doesn't really come in until like much later, or they work for like a little bit of extra money for some overtime. So they're going to stay. And this guy was just, quintessential fuckboy. He had the square diamond earrings and everything. Light skin, of course. They don't have to be light skinned, but they do have to have the square earrings. And I don't know why the heck he kept trying to like bug me about wanting to come out and hang out at like way late. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And he'd always just like get upset and annoyed and like, why am I even entertaining this guy? I was young and stupid. Yeah. External people definitely like once again like blame everything on people or whatever, or project everything onto others. It's of course like a form of insecurity, but like let's say you got, like as I mentioned before, like let's say you got a promotion, you think it's more so due to luck and being at the right place at the right time. Most things are both external and internal forces. You did work hard for the position. You did like you're being noticed for it. And there's a bit of luck for being at the right place at the right time. The right place could literally just be your job. And you just happen to be working at your job at 2 p.m. March 18th, 2025, which you would normally be doing anyway. And there was an opening for a position and your manager put in a good word and or your director or whatever, and you happen to get the job. So it's both. You have been working hard. You do deserve it. It wasn't just due to luck. However, luck did play a part in it because you could have been possibly working at a different job, but you're working at this current company. So yeah, like sometimes like the good things that do happen in your life are due to the hard work that you put in. Also, it's also due to luck and some external factors. There's a false belief in this country that if you work hard, you get what you deserve. You make it. You get what you deserve. But if you've actually lived in the real world or have met and talked to a lot of different people, you start to realize that not everyone comes from like a two-parent household, with two working parents who had their own place, and you were able to live there rent free. You were able to save money after you graduated college, you came home, you got like a very high, well paying job. You're able to save money, you didn't have to pay rent or anything. And you're able to, and you're able to like save up and buy a home like what I did. Not everybody comes from that. There's always, I guarantee you, there was a kid in your high school who had to drop out to work at Wendy's full time to help pay bills for his mom because his mom got sick and she needed the medication, but she couldn't afford the medication or something like that. There's always, that's unfortunately like, that kid's situation was due to external forces. He couldn't control who his mom was. He couldn't control where he could live, really, especially at like 16, 17. You can't really do that. And you're only able to get certain jobs. However, the internal forces is that he worked hard to at least be able to, he applied, he did the work to get a job at Wendy's, which you can't really look past on. Every job there are people out there who've all their jobs they've never applied for because it's based on the people that they know, which is, external forces, external factors. And then there's people but most people have definitely gotten to where they are due to the internal forces and internal factors of what they've worked hard for. I've noticed that internal people look within themselves a lot and try to see what they can change. They blame a lot of things on themselves. They get very mad or disappointed at themselves when things don't turn out too well. Even if it was out of their control completely, they somehow blame it on themselves that it was their own control when it wasn't. They're oftentimes could be like depressed or anxious about a lot of things. Granted, these aren't just two separate types of people. I'm not trying to like Myers-Briggs this or like astrology this kind of crap. It's we all have aspects of externals and internals. We all do. Depending on like with different times or with like different people in different situations. You can be an external person when it comes to your family, which is something I see a lot, but an internal person when it comes to your job or your home. There's a lot of people who blame who they are based off of their parents, and I absolutely get that. I understand that. Of course, your parents and how you grew up plays a massive role and has a massive effect on you. It absolutely does. There's no way, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It's not your whole entire self, though. There are people that I know who are just complete assholes who are, in their 30s, still just absolutely terrible with money, not trying to, like, not pay rent, spending their money on, like, booze and whatever things that are, make them feel good for the moment on other vices. They don't seek therapy, even though they're trying to self-medicate themselves with alcohol or weed or sex, porn, or like just playing video games or, watching TV all day, like what have you. They're just trying to self-medicate. instead of trying to get to the root of their problem. I remember hearing once that your parents might be responsible for your traumas, but they're not responsible for how you deal and process those traumas. They're not responsible for that. It sucks, but it's true. And what a lot of people who've, had very rough upbringings, abusive upbringings, just like traumatic upbringings, and like they've never had the opportunity to process it, or they process it by like hustling and grinding and working hard in order to make a lot of money, because they think just having a lot of money will solve everything, when that's not the case. Not to sound stereotypical, I do not have all the money, so maybe it does, but based on current politics, it doesn't seem that way. Still seems like they're looking for something or getting some kind of validation from some magical person, when you're really trying to just get the validation from yourself and like the people like that you truly care about, or the people you truly care about, not necessarily an and. An and can be helpful. So they either try to like work hard to make a lot of money to put on a facade that, life is great, when they're not feeling that way internally. They're trying to sleep with a lot of, men, women, what have you. Trying to sleep with a lot of people. They, try to travel a lot. They just try to spend money, try to feel good for the moment, and it does feel good, but you come back and, you come back to your day to day and you're still like not happy. You're still trying to chase something, trying to, bury a feeling, because you're not looking at yourself internally. And what ends up happening when they start to get into relationships, they are hoping that either the person they're in a relationship with, or even other family members, to friendships, just any sort of relationship outside of themselves, they're hoping that this person can cure them, can fix them, and they get very frustrated and angry and abusive when they cannot do that. And when it's in reality, as cliche as it sounds, they got to look internally to fix themselves. They got to look internally to see like, okay, why am I lashing out? Why can't I stop arguing with people? Why do I always have to like seem smarter than everybody else? Why do I have to pretend like everything, like trying to make a joke out of everything, when actually this shit really bothers me, type of stuff? So they try to, project certain aspects of their lives, when in reality, like they need to focus on themselves. I know that saying like go get therapy sounds so cliche, and of course therapy doesn't work for everybody, but they don't seem to realize that there isn't really anyone who has the time and patience to really sit down and help them. Because I've seen that. I've seen women pretty much just give up their whole lives to try to fix someone who believes that everything that happens to them is due to external causes. I've seen that, like who in a relationship with like a man specifically. I've seen that. I've seen men. I have guy friends who've been in relationships with women where they try to fix everything for her. They try to make sure that her life is just spectacular, and she's still like a whiny, complaining bitch. And there's just nothing he can do, because there isn't anything he can do. He can't make her happy. Like we can't make other people happy. We can add to their happiness. We can add to their lives, but we cannot complete their lives, because we have our own lives that we need to complete. So when an external person gets with an internal person, whether it's like relationship, friendship, what have you, it could be incredibly messy, because the external person wants that internal person to fix everything, and the internal person feels as though they are failing this person because they're not fixing them. Because the internal person blames everything on themselves and the external person blames everything on external factors. They might think that they didn't get the promotion because they're not black or some shit. Or when in reality they're just like very subpar at their job. Internal people think that they are the change that they need to make the change in the world. And if they are not changing, then the world isn't changing. Very extreme, I know. I know this because I wouldn't say I lean more internal. I feel as though that I need to do things in order for things to change, especially within my own life. I think the reason why I've seen that is because I've seen it work, even though and whenever something external happens to me, it's very hard for me to process because this is something out of my control. I wouldn't say I'm controlling, but I have had trouble trying to take my hands off of certain things, especially when it comes to things within my own house. My boyfriend, I'm sure, can attest to this. Whenever he is cooking for me or cleaning my place up, like after he cooks or what have you, I try to stay away from the kitchen because I'm going to be having a conniption over the littlest of things, the tiniest of things. I'm aware of this. When my mom lived with me, I'd get really upset whenever water would be on the ground. Granted, I have tiled floors and I walk around barefoot. So if I get upset with the water on the ground, it's more than likely because I was almost about to slip, which I don't want to do that. I don't want to slip and fall on the tile because that would hurt really bad. Also, I have a galley kitchen, which means like it's kind of like a hallway of a kitchen. So on one side of the walls, it's the sink and counter space and cabinets. The other side is the stove and cabinets and things like that. So, and it's a pretty thin kitchen, so I don't want to fall and hit my head on something. That might be really extreme. Honestly, blame that on my mom because she likes to think of the most extreme of everything. That's my little hint of externalness. Though whenever like there would be water and I would slip and I'd be like, "Mom, is there water? Like there's water on the ground." And she'd be like, act like it's she'd be like, "Oh, that's whatever. That's not a big deal. Why are you freaking out?" It's like because I almost slipped. And she's very like no harm, no foul whenever it comes to anything that she's doing when it comes to like her kids. So it's like, all right, nothing happened to her, so nothing happened to Leandra, so whatever, she's complaining, she blows everything out of proportion. Even though that is definitely not the case. That's definitely my mom. She might hear this. I don't care. If she finds this surprising, she better ask every single one of her children, because mom definitely turns anthills into mountains. And the mountains, she pretends like they're anthills, and it is very frustrating. So, so I would get like, pissy and everything about like little things like that. Even though literally water on the ground is kind of a bit of a concern, just wipe up the water. Anyway. So like I could definitely get that way of feeling very controlling within like my own space, because it's my space, so I like things a certain way. However, I'm trying, and I've been opening up to other things, of other ways of doing things within my own space and stuff like that. Another like version of like external versus internal that we haven't really touched on in this episode, even though I'm sure I've mentioned it in a previous episode. It's also looking at your space, your home, the things that you have and where it's placed. even small things. I was helping my boyfriend out with rearranging his room at his place the other day, and there were just like a couple of things that he wasn't really like thinking about, or for years he's had a bunch of cables and cords in this really long box, which that could fit a lot more things, but that was his cable box, and it was a really long box. And he had this really nice smaller box. So when we were organizing the stuff underneath his bed, because we got him a storage bed, like a bed that you lift up the bed and there's a bunch of storage underneath the bed. So he was trying to contain all the things that were underneath his bed, this type of stuff. So I told him to take out some of the cords and cables that he's never going to use, because if he's been carrying this box of cables for like years from place to place, the cables are probably like, some of them might be like 10 years old type of stuff, using like a micro USB. Something that you're probably just never going to use anymore, except for certain speakers that I have, which is really annoying. So I have to keep them. Anyway, so, like some really old cables. I was like, why don't you just get rid of some of the cables and then put the ones that you're going to keep, since you need to keep them for whatever reason, then put them in the smaller box, and then you could probably put other things in the bigger box. So because he's had these cables in this box for so long, he couldn't really conceptualize another thing to do. Whereas I'm seeing these things for the first time, and it's a very easy thing for me to process. And I see this a lot with even like with my own self. There's a lot of cleaning and organizing that I have to do within my place. And I've been trying to think outside the box, which has been helpful. I'm trying to, not put so much like emphasis on certain things and like where they are. It's good to bring somebody into your space in terms of helping to reorganize, because you've only seen your things as you. You've never not been you in your home, you never not been you in your room. So you put things where you would put things. I'm not telling you to be self-conscious about where you put your things. It's just it makes sense to you. And then you find a bunch of stuff piling up, and all these things make sense to you. And then, somebody comes in, like your partner or whatever, or your friend or what have you, and like they are like, well, what's like, oh, you needed help. Like, what's this pile for? It's like, oh, it's my pile of mail. Okay. How often do you go through your mail? Like, never. I never get any legit mail. It's just maybe there might be something one day that is in there that I might need somehow. That's me. I keep accumulating mail, and it's aggravating, but I keep thinking I need to look through the mail. But after a while, I just like throw out the mail. I'm like, I'm not going to look at this mail. No one has come knocking on my door saying that they need something, that I owe them something. So I clearly don't need this mail. But I just have a weird habit of holding on to mail, even if the mail isn't important at all or doesn't, help me with anything. I'm not going to open up a credit card in my LLC anytime soon. And as sure as hell won't it be Capital One. I'm not going to use them. But I don't know. I just hold on to it. It's like, oh yeah, this could remind me to look into my business bank account, because I want to move from bank A to bank B. Like, I don't know. It's just like my mind gives it a reason to exist when it really doesn't need to exist. So it's good to have somebody on the outside and just kind of like just kind of externalizing the reason, like, okay, why do you need this? Do you actually need this? He's just somebody completely on the outside and just being like, hey, you don't actually need this. Like, this is a you thing because you're out here internalizing every single piece of mail. Yeah. But yeah, thank you all so much for listening. I didn't say this on the last episode, but you can email me at agreeablegrayarea@gmail.com. Gray spelled with an A. You can sign up on my website. I haven't even sent an email ever. I don't know who has signed up or registered or anything. I will probably try to clean up my website, but you could go to agreeablegrayarea.com, gray spelled with an A. I really hope it's working. I haven't looked at it in a while. But whatever. For the sake of this episode, it's working. Everything's fine. I recorded this episode and the bonus episode on the Shure MV7X microphone. It's my newest microphone. I've been recording the other previous episodes on MV7. It's essentially the same microphone. They even sound the same. They look the same. Except the MV7X is only an XLR microphone, whereas the MV7 uses both XLR and USB-C. It doesn't seem as though Amazon sells the MV7 anymore. I didn't really look into it too much. The reason why I bought the MV7X is because I'll be starting my new podcast series, Moment of Clarity. It's going to be a video podcast series where I interview the amazing men in my life and, ask them and figure out the trial and tribulations that they've went through growing up and how they made it out on the other side. Very amazing, successful men, in my opinion. They're probably listening to this and they're like, who is she talking about? And I'm talking about you. So, and also the MV7X microphone was a lot cheaper, and I have XLR cable, so it works out fine. But yeah, definitely stick around for my new podcast series, Moment of Clarity. I really hope y'all enjoy it. I really hope y'all enjoy this episode, which I'm hoping it'll come out today, March 16th. I'm going to try to clean it up like right now. I'm not going to try to clean up my episodes as much as I used to. I think I've mentioned that in a previous episode. It takes too long. It's way too much work. And I don't want to... I may eventually go on to some Fiverr person, but I don't know. Whatever. I prefer authenticity. Maybe for video, because that's still a newer beast to me. Video editing. Different from live streaming, because you don't really edit live streams. So I might look into Fiverr, or, if you know anybody, and I decide to try to edit things, let me know. Yeah, thank you all so much for listening, and I'll see y'all on the next episode. I gave y'all 2 today for March 16th. Hopefully this comes out today, so don't bother me until September. Love you all. Bye.